Total War Warhammer 3's new DLC, Champions of Chaos, or COC, brings us a whole new way of looking at DLC for Game 3. In this video, I want to talk about just that, how DLC has to change for Total War going forward in Game 3. We'll start out by talking about some of the missing units and factions at a high level, before closing the video out talking about some of my ideas for how this can be accomplished. Feel free to jump ahead to any section that interests you the most, using the chapters in the timeline and the description. But when we look at the past kind of 7 some odd years of Total War Warhammer, we get DLCs that have followed a very formulaic, or at least cookie cutter approach. 2 lords of 2 different factions, squaring off, adding in new units, lords, and heroes with some regiments of renown, and an accompanying piece of free content known as FLC. Champions of Chaos breaks that mold and delivers 4 new lords, all for the Warriors of Chaos faction. Huge disclaimer up front though, Creative Assembly has already said that they will be taking a different approach to DLCs in the future, which we clearly are seeing in this very first one. And I think that's crucial, because there just aren't enough units to really be had across most of the factions to warrant the standard format, especially for the multiple years of support via DLC that CA has planned. Honestly, I find this to be a really strong thing for the franchise, and it will hopefully reduce the time in between major content updates or drops. But let's talk about some of the missing units to get an idea of what could be coming in Warhammer 3. If you end up enjoying the video, guys, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. All those help every channel you watch in varying ways, especially if you hit the bell icon and turn on notifications. Otherwise, YouTube will likely not push the videos of your favorite content creators, me, out to you, because there's an algorithm for every goddamn thing on this channel, or on this website. But let's get started on why I think DLC has to change for Total War Warhammer 3. And accompanying us today is the lovely Dark Elf soundtrack from the Total War Warhammer 2 soundtrack. And let's talk about some of the missing units. And this kind of gives us a good idea. And this isn't a complete list of missing units, it's just kind of some of the ones that I could think of off the top of my head that are missing from some of the Game 1 and Game 2 factions. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I think it gives us a good idea of what we can expect for future DLC. We look at the High Elves, we're missing the Skycutters, the Anointed of Assyrian, and the Sea Helms. And I've already talked about how there could possibly be an Aisling themed DLC for the High Elves, and how that might maybe bring in Merworms or other characters like, I think they're called the Sea Patrol is the name of the unit. That would be basically a sword and board unit for the High Elves. That's something that they've never had really in 8th edition. And for the most part, the missing units I'm pulling from are from the 8th edition army books. It seems that Creative Assembly will try to exhaust that route first before jumping into stuff like Forge World and Allied Contingents and what have you. But if you look at Empire, I think it's like when you look at this list in general, you can see that like Empire has some of the most quote-unquote missing units, because Engineers, Gold Wizards, Wizard Lords, Celestial Hurricanum, Tamarkon Forge World stuff. And the reason I put Tamarkon Forge World stuff when I just said I'm not going to put a bunch of Forge World stuff on here is because they clearly are now pulling heavily from from Tamarkon in specific for Warhammer 3. So I think that that's kind of something to kind of take a look at now going forward. And I think that this kind of shows us maybe Empire has a strong future as a very close upcoming DLC for Warhammer 3, because remember, the Empire is the most played faction next to Skaven in Warhammer 1 and 2, or at least Mortal Empires, right, when we talk about the combine of both of them. So this shows me there's plenty of options for them. But when we look at the dwarfs, okay, there's the Demon and the Dragon Slayer, the Thunder Barge, and I'm putting Doomseeker and Goblin Hewer, which are part of the Storm of Darkness, is that what it is? Basically the special supplement that kind of End of the World then was retconned for dwarves. So there's not really much units to add. Vampire counts, you've got the Coven Thrones, the Spirit Hosts, and the Morghasts. Again, not that many. And Morghast, I think, would probably come with what's his name? Nagash and adding in like an undead legion. And that's a really good question. Here's your poll of the day. What would you guys like to see for the next DLC for Warhammer 3? 2 Warhammer 3 or a Warhammer 3 faction, or a Warhammer 2 versus Warhammer 3 faction, Warhammer 1 or 2, doesn't matter. But basically I'm saying, do you want it to be focused on Warhammer 3 adding Cathayan and Kislevite units, or maybe do you want it to be adding in something from the older races? Go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Greenskins, though, they've got a lot of different squigs, Mangler Squid, Colossal Squigs, the Squig Artillery, the Squig Gaba, then the Savage Orc War Bosses. Ogre Kingdoms have Bruisers, Yetis, and Thunder Tusks. Plenty of units to be added there for the Ogre Kingdoms. Skaven just have the Vermin Lords and Storm Fiends. The Norskins have a bunch of random Forge World units, but I mean, they're kind of like one of those like, hey, this is something that's never really had an official full-on 8th edition launch, so we can do whatever we want with them with Norska. So they could be expanded in any way, shape, or form. So my point here is, there's really not a ton of units left to be added. Dark Elves, I think they're missing one monster, and I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is. Yeah, maybe just like a pack of monsters. What's it called? Not Manticores and Basilisk. You guys will tell me in the comments, I'm sure. But still, there's just not a ton. Almost every single roster is like at least 90% complete, right? Like you look at the Lizardmen, you look at the Tomb Kings, you look at all these other rosters, and they're pretty much complete from their 8th edition perspective. And that tells me that I think that for the future for DLC, you can't have this single lord with just a couple more units. I think the typical formula is one legendary lord, one generic lord that matches that legendary lord, typically a hero, and then 3 to 4 units that are usually added in alongside that character. So I think that leaves us one for the High Elves, one like possible DLC, one maybe possible DLC for the Empire, one for the Dwarfs, maybe one for the Vampire Counts, and that one would be probably Nagash. Maybe one for Greenskins, clearly one for Ogre Kingdoms, and then one for the Skaven. I think that's kind of really if we're trying to follow that exact replica, that exact kind of format of, hey, this is the DLC format. You get the 2 lords, you get the lords, the heroes, and all the characters. But I would like to see it differ from that route. And this is kind of my fix, or my I guess hey, here's a solution. So with all that in mind, here's really my solution for all of it. And it just really comes down to the fact that you have plenty of legendary lords to choose from. Plenty of legendary lords for the High Elves, the Dark Elves, the Wood Elves, for Empire, for Bretonnia. But don't even get me started on Bretonnia. There are so many characters. When you look at the previous editions, 5th edition and 6th editions really both have a ton of legendary lords that get dropped from the game. There was a point in Warhammer where it was called Hero Hammer, where people would just have all these named characters and they would just raffle stomp across the board with the named characters. And a lot of those were kind of just thrown away in a focus for more prominent characters or characters that were more important to each faction. So there's plenty of just kind of old names. Rapunzel Lyonesse is a really great example of, hey, this is a character that's kind of really obscure, mainly in a White Dwarf, or like I think the 5th edition. I might be in the 5th edition Bretonnian book. I can't remember. But mainly it's just kind of a very obscure character that just kind of like got resurrected. So quite literally resurrected. I think she died in the White Dwarf supplement. So with that in mind, I think that the solution here is to break this mold and to have a format of DLC that focuses on lords solely, because I would rather pay for a DLC that offered me 4 or 6 legendary lords, all with new campaign mechanics applied to each one, and that's it. That's all. Okay, it's a DLC pack that's got High Elves versus Dark Elves, if we want to stick with the same kind of quote-unquote versus theme. And that's going to add in Aisling. It's going to add in Corhill. And then on the Dark Elf side, it's going to add in Corran Darkhand or the Executioner guy, who just completely escaped my brain right now. And a lot of mods have extended this out, and they're just like, hey, you want this kind of character? Here's the mod. He's in the game right now. Go ahead and have at it. Wood Elves, Araloth, that's another example that I've always talked about. Lady Elspeth for Empire. You have all these kind of characters that are not necessarily the bigger, heavy hitter, the biggie, what am I saying? The bigger, heavier hitting ones like Karl Franz, but are still really cool, thematic, fun characters that you could have a lot of fun with. And I think that is the way it has to happen in the future. Don't focus so much on these major content drops that are $10 or $15. Give me a $5 DLC pack that adds in 4 legendary lords. That's 4 different campaigns, 4 different starting locations across the map that allow me to play in Immortal Empires. And maybe that's the caveat. Like, okay, if you want these special Lord packs, you can only play them in Immortal Empires because we don't really want to create specific campaigns that go onto the Chaos Realm map every single time. Maybe that's what we have to deal with if that's the case. I'm fine with that. And I think the majority of people play Immortal Empires or Mortal Empires than they do Vortex or Chaos. Well, we don't know what that would be like for Warhammer 3 yet because it's not out until the end of August, but still, I think it would follow the same trend that it did in Warhammer 2. And that's, I think, kind of crucial here, right? Even if these DLCs weren't Lord packs and it added heroes, that is something that a lot of us have wanted for ages. I would pay like 10 or 15 bucks for a pack that added 2 legendary heroes to every single faction. Like, hey, the character doesn't have any campaign mechanics, well, not necessarily campaign mechanics, no actual dedicated campaign, but you can have Shadowblade as a character in your Dark Elf campaign now, which is notoriously not a hero or Lord character. He's just kind of a hero character, and he's a super jacked Dark Elf assassin, and maybe have to go through a certain campaign route to get him. Maybe kind of adding these legendary heroes that have certain stipulations and more fun, and add like, okay, hey, if I'm going to be playing as Malekith, I have an option to get one of the 3 of the cool legendary heroes, and it allows me to play my campaign in another specific way that forces me down a specific legendary hero quest line that unlocks that hero. I think that'd be a great way to layer in the heroes of the game that have been kind of thrown, not necessarily to the wayside, but they've been promoted to Lord status more often than not. A great example would be Deathmaster Snikch. He's not supposed to be a leader. He's not supposed to be a lord when we look at the 8th edition quote-unquote lore. But he is a legendary lord in this game, and he can lead your entire army. So rather than just simply promoting heroes, and we have started to get more heroes brought into the mix and little spices here and there, I think adding more legendary heroes would be an amazing way to just kind of keep some longevity to some content drops without them having to be these major, huge, pivotal, all right, here's another DLC pack, and it's going to be the same type of approach to it, and here it is going forward. So I would love to see more lords, less units, more heroes, less lords maybe. So all those things in varying degrees. And you guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Would you like to see more strictly Lord Pack DLCs that just add 4 of a specific faction, or 2 of one faction versus 2 of another faction? I think that's kind of a great way to give us a lot of spice there. Or would you like to see more legendary heroes? Do you like the idea of legendary heroes being locked behind some sort of specific quest chain, or having prerequisites, or something that requires you to do something, right? Like, oh, okay, hey, if you want... what's a legendary hero? I can't think about the top of my head. Oh man, all of the really cool Elector counts from the Empire, it'd be cool to get them as legendary heroes in some way, shape, or form by doing specific tasks as Karl Franz. Just like we get with Vlad and Isabella. If you're playing as Vlad, you get Isabella as a hero. If you're playing as Isabella, you get Vlad as a hero. I think that's a really cool step. And I think that's kind of something that tells me that this is already in the sights for Creative Assembly. They're already taking a look at how they can start incorporating legendary heroes into the game. And I think maybe getting that little bit of a push from the community saying, yes, we do want heroes. This is the capacity we want them, is going to be huge. So let that be known in the comment section below, guys. Let it be known how you'd want to see future DLCs that are different from the standard template of DLCs for Total War Warhammer 3. As always, though, thank you so much for watching here today. I'm super hyped on the next DLC coming out. This was something that I've wanted to talk about, and it didn't feel pertinent until the DLC announcement that clearly changes the way that it all looks. So I felt like, hey, why don't I talk about it right now? And go ahead and answer that poll question in the bottom. What would you like to see for the next DLC? Warhammer 3 factions, Warhammer 1 and 2 factions, or Warhammer 1 and 2 versus Warhammer 3? What would you like to see? Again, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.